Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation. I am T.J. Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, Taj Jackson.
What's going on, T?
Nothing much, Taj. Today's date is Wednesday, October 19, 2022. And we, of course, are live on Facebook and YouTube. And you also may be listening to us via podcast on all the major podcast platforms. Yes, this is also a podcast. We want to thank you all for joining or listening to us. We also want to encourage you to either like, subscribe, leave a great comment. It just helps others find this content who may be searching for it. We are going to have a wonderful guest join us for today's Power of Love show. It's going to be a great show. But the one thing I do want you all to know is that, at least for me and Taj, we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who've experienced loss in our lives. We've been impacted by it, and we have learned from it. And what we like to do here at DDJF is we like to share our opinions in an attempt to help you get through whatever it is you are going through, saying that if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please do not just rely on us. Taj Jackson, that was the intro. Is there anything I may have missed or anything you want to add before we get going with our show?
Not really. Been a hectic month, but
yeah,
a lot going on. We got a Halloween party coming up, for our foundation, and also Prince and John's Foundation, Hill, Los Angeles. So it's an exciting month, but it's also a month of chaos for me. So
yeah, I mentioned it before. I think it was on last week's show, but this is Taj's. This is Taj's, in a way, baby. He was one of the first ones, if not the first one, to help spirit into a foundation and a positive night for charity. So this is where Taj really goes in the trenches.
Well, I was just saying that if I look tired, it's because I am. Someone said that. Someone said that in the comments last time. It just like, Taj, you look tired, and I am tired. But I'm always excited to do this, because this is one of those staples that I'm excited about. In terms of that. So.
How do you feel about it, Taj? Are you excited for it? Like, is there anything you want to share with people about it?
No, I mean, it's going to be a great night. 2 nights. It's 2 nights, so it's going to be great in that way. But in general, we're going bigger and better. We're celebrating Thriller 40 at the same time. So the 40th anniversary of Thriller. So that's going to be exciting in itself. But then also, we got some surprises as well. So it should be really a lot of fun. And obviously, I think it's for 2 great causes. So in general, I'm very proud of that aspect of it. And so it should be a lot of fun.
Cool. I'm not going to, last quick question. Do you know what you're wearing?
Actually do, because I tried on another outfit, and it was like a Where's Waldo, and it looked like, it actually looked like Who Ate Waldo instead of Where's Waldo. So it didn't fit me very well. It wasn't very flattering. So my other costume's a little more form-fitting, so it's going to be good.
Very cool. We'll keep it a surprise, because I know that's part of the fun of Halloween.
Let's just say it's very comfortable, like in that way. Like I decided comfort, because I'm going to be wearing the same outfit for 2 nights, and it's comfortable, and it photogenically it looks good too, because we're going to be taking a lot of pictures, obviously. So.
There you go. All right. Well, let's get into it, Taj. We have a great show lined up. On today's episode of the Power of Love show, we welcome special guest Andrea Dorn. Andrea Dorn, MSW, is a mom, author, psychotherapist, and the founder of Bloom Therapy and Wellness Center. She has worked supporting children, adults, and families in trauma and grief in the social work field for over a decade. Andrea is the author of the Mindful Steps series, an engaging series of children's how-to guides designed to empower kids with the foundational understanding of important developmental Skills and Concepts for Key Milestones Common in Early Childhood. Her series has been praised by experts including David Kessler and Jennifer Cohen Harper. She has currently published five children's books and contributed to numerous article publications, including those featured in Oprah Daily, PsychCentral, and In the Know by Yahoo. Through her work, Andrea is dedicated to and passionate about helping young minds and their families navigate the big and small changes that come with child development by encouraging playfulness, mindfulness, and emotional connection. Here today, everyone, to discuss her work and the latest installment in the Mindful Steps book series entitled When Someone Dies, a children's mindful how-to guide on grief and loss. Without much further ado, please welcome to the Power of Love show, Andrea Dorn. Andrea, how are you?
Hello, I'm good.
So good to have you on the show. We love having our authors and writers and those who can influence so many on our show. So thank you again for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, you have quite an extensive resume holding many impressive titles, including mom, author, psychotherapist, and founder of a therapist and wellness center. One common thread through your work is a focus on child development and mindfulness. Your website provides resources for parents and kids to inspire mindfulness, connection, and kindness. What inspired you, Andrea, to work in this realm and make this the focus of your work?
Well, first, I just want to take one more second to thank you both for having me here today. I'm really inspired by both of you and the work that you're doing to provide a platform for other people to share their work, and really the way you're kind of keeping the memory of your mother alive in your work. So thank you for having me here today. Yes. But, I've been inspired by so many things professionally, personally throughout my life. And I think when I talk to a lot of people, one thing that a lot of people can resonate with is this idea of finding our passion and our purpose in life through finding meaning through struggle. And I think that is true in grief and loss. And I think that that's really just true in general. And I was a kid that grew up with pretty severe childhood and adolescent anxiety. And what we know about anxiety is you kind of form a disconnect with yourself and with others in order to cope with that. And so throughout my childhood and my adult life, I really got good at disconnecting and creating kind of this facade in order to cope. And as I got older and started to find more of myself, that really led me in the direction of social work, and it led me in the direction of working in psychology and with others. And that then led me to be really inspired by the people that I've met along that journey. It took me a long time to get there. I have a music degree, actually, that I experienced before getting to a psychology and social work, clinical social work degree. But as I started working in social work, what I really found was helping people connect with themselves and others really begins in early childhood. And it is one of the most important times that we can capitalize on impacting the brain and really normalizing this idea of creating an environment where healthy coping skills can be established. And so that's where I really started focusing my work. And then I had my own kids, and that just inspired me further. But I think what ultimately really started this drive inside of me is my own struggle and really finding meaning and helping others through that struggle.
So, and that's great. And you have cultivated a very helpful book series entitled Mindful Steps series, which includes 5 children's books, right? Mm-hmm. And then your latest installment is a book entitled When Someone Dies, a children's mindful how-to guide on grief and loss. That's a topic that goes, that's a tough one to I guess, approach to include in the series. So I guess my first question is, what inspired you to include a book on this subject into your children's series?
Well, if it's okay, I think it's helpful to understand my series as a whole in order to understand why I included this book in the series. And my series is really based on the idea of helping kids work through transitions with the idea of helping them prepare to work through transitions in early childhood development. And so when we think about learning something, we typically think about 3 different phases that we have to work through. So there's like the preparation phase, the learning phase, and then the doing phase. And my books really focus on this preparation phase, or priming the brain to be ready to do the learning and the doing phases. And so all of my books are really focused on creating this environment in which kids can learn about what they're going to learn about so that they can more effectively do the thing that they have to do when they have to do it. So they know what to expect, and they know when or what's expected of them when they do go through these big changes to them in their little lives. So I've written about a lot of different topics, but grief and loss is a very universal experience for us all. And so it seemed like a really important topic to include in this series, because it's something that we all, it's not really a matter of if, but a matter of when. So when children experience grief and loss, they now have a foundational understanding on which to be able to work through those feelings. That doesn't mean it won't still be difficult or challenging for them, but they now have a basis on which to go from to be able to work through those feelings. And it was really important to me because of some of my own losses that I experienced in my life, but also to support some of the families that I've worked with. You know, I've been inspired by so many different families that I've worked with in my career and in my personal life. So I wanted to provide something that is such a universal experience. I wanted to provide a foundational understanding for people so that they could connect again to themselves and to others during this difficult time.
So I commend you, because that's not easy to do, but I think the mindset is perfectly correct. I think you hit it right there, because I think oftentimes what happens is we brush it off. We brush the idea of losing someone or having to go through grief. It's one of those topics where if we just can ignore it, that we get this crazy mindset that that's healthy to do or that's okay to do. But what I found is being able to talk about it and discuss it better prepares you, because like you said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I strongly, and I know my brother would agree, commend you for doing that and including this topic in your series. What do you think is a good age for children to read your book?
My book was written for kids around the ages of 4 to 8. That's kind of the sweet spot, but I've read it to kids as young as 3 and as old as 10. I've actually had adults tell me they've benefited from reading the book, because it really is just a how-to guide. It's a nonfiction kind of book, and there's not a lot of fluff for a real storyline that's necessarily surrounding it. So 4 to 8 is the sweet spot, but it really can be expanded depending on how you use it.
And how can we, well, first, before we talk about how we can get a copy, what do you hope parents and children take from the book?
This is such a good question, and there's so many things, but I think 2 main things are, the book is written to really normalize grief, because it's such a normal experience. So I hope that the parents and kids will understand and be able to really learn that grief is normal, but there's no one normal way to grieve. the book is written to kind of expose kids to the potential experience they might have while grieving, and when experiencing a loss, but not necessarily specifically putting anything into a box. So it doesn't really assume any kind of one experience that a child will have. So I hope that they'll understand that grief is normal. It's a normal thing, but it's also normal to have your own experience in grief. And then the other thing that I hope that parents and families and kids will be empowered in is understanding that we can experience difficult and life transformative things, and we can learn skills and find connection and know that we can be okay and find a life worth meaning. So we can do difficult things and be okay. We can experience hardship and be okay. There's a dialectic there that can be very empowering, and it might take a while to get there, but it can be there, especially after we lose someone in our lives.
Now, Andrea, where can people get the book?
It is available wherever books are sold. Amazon. It is available in some select Barnes & Noble stores, Walmart, Target, wherever books are sold, you can find When Someone Dies.
One of our community members, Georgina, came up with a great idea during last week's live show. She said to ask authors if they could read an excerpt of their book to give our audience an idea of the content. Would you consider sharing a passage from your book with us today?
Sure. I would.
Great.
I would be happy to do that. So my book is written to kind of ease kids into talking about grief. It's written so that you could read it before a child even experiences loss, just to kind of explain what loss is to them. So I'm going to read the first 5 spreads, I think, just to kind of give you a flavor. And the book is also written with a character that has your child's name. So this helps the child identify more with the concepts in the book. So you'll see kind of how that works. But, oh, hi there. What is your name? Really? That is my name too. I am growing every day. And as I grow, I get to learn lots of fun things. It can be exciting to learn new things and get to know new people in my life. But sometimes people in my life go away. People go away for different reasons and for different amounts of time. Sometimes when someone goes away, it means I can't see them right now, but I can see or talk to them again later. But there are times when people go away because they have died. When someone dies, it means that all the parts of their body and mind have stopped working, and they won't start working again. This means I won't be able to see or talk to them anymore. Dying is a normal part of life, but when someone close to me dies, lots of confusing things can happen inside of my body and around me. To help me feel better, I am learning how to say goodbye and grieve. And the book goes on to describe what grief means, and then what happens during the goodbye process and the grieving process.
This is very cool, and thank you for reading an excerpt from it. Yeah. That was great.
I have a question today.
Yeah.
General, were you always good at writing, or was this something that you just decided to do in that way? 5 books is very impressive in itself, and just wondering, like, was that always your calling to write books, or was it something that you just felt you needed to do because of your grief?
No, it's funny because I think sometimes things just come to your life and they make sense, but it has to it has to kind of be the right time. And I've always been a person that really aligns with expressive arts. And I originally, it was really music for me. And then it turned into more of writing. And so it sort of was something that came later for me, but it's something that I found such a passion for, and I know I'll continue doing it. But but yeah, it's funny how things kind of just align and work, and you really have to find them and be brave enough to go after them when those things come up. But yeah.
As I just had highlighted, learning how to say goodbye. That's very cool, because I believe that is what we all have to learn how to do in our own particular way, and it's just a very powerful concept that we don't discuss enough. In your opinion, what is the best setting and tone in which to broach the topic of loss and grief with children? You think it should be more of a casual conversation? Should it be more of a formal sit down, one-on-one, as a family, as a group? What do you think, Andrea?
The answer is always, it depends, because everything is so, it really depends on the family. It depends on the child. It depends on the situation. But in general, I think for grief and loss, it's just so important to normalize it right from the get-go. And you can do that by having just really casual conversations and bringing up really concrete terminology with your kids when they're young. Reading books is a great way to start talking about grief and loss and death with your kids before, again, they experience a loss. And really, we start to experience loss from infancy, right? I mean, when our caregiver leaves us in our bassinet or our crib, we experience feelings of loss when they walk away from us. So these aren't emotions that are totally foreign to us. So if we start to talk about them early and often, we start to have a better mastery over them as we grow. So I think a casual setting is perfect. Reading a book, making sure it's a trusted caregiver that talks to the child about this concept is very important. If the loss has already happened, making sure that whoever is speaking with the child has processed some of their own emotions first. Maybe asking what the child already knows before sharing information. These are all some things you can keep in mind. But I think one of the most important things we can keep in mind is not putting our own messaging on what grief and loss means onto our children, not projecting those things onto our kids, and really giving them the space to have their own grief feelings, and just kind of giving them the information to do with that what kind of comes up for them, because kids process grief very differently than adults.
Well said. Anna says death, loss, grief is definitely universal. And Soria wonders, does it make them anxious to talk about death to kids? That's what she's concerned about. I think so, but at the same time, I feel it's a topic that, as Andrea said, it's a matter of if, not when. And the better we can prepare them, even if it makes them anxious, I think the better it will serve them. But that was just my slight answer. I'm curious to know what your feeling is, Andrea. What would be your take if someone was worried about the idea of reading a story that deals with grief and loss can make kids too anxious to talk about death?
Well, again, we're a really grief avoidant society. And so there are some uncomfortable feelings that come with grief and loss. And, in my particular book, I write about steps to cope with some of those difficult feelings. But as a protective and a securely attached caregiver with our kids, our job is to let them know that they can experience those discomforting feelings and be okay. And we can help them work through some of those feelings by being close to them, by being next to them, by showing them these skills. But it's normal to feel a little bit scared sometimes about grief and loss and death. But again, also some of that can be our own anxieties that we're projecting onto them. Kids are naturally curious about death and grief and loss. They want to know about this. In fact, I've had a lot of parents reach out to me and say, my child wants to read this book every night before bed because they just really want to talk about grief and loss. It doesn't make them anxious. They're really curious about it. And I think we lose some of that curiosity as we get older, and we just kind of replace it with a little bit of fear. And so then we can project that onto our kids, which is so normal. But But a lot of times kids are just curious.
Yeah. And I like what Andrew says. Grief books can help a lot, especially for kids. I love grief books because I think it provides a safe place for you to understand concepts and ideas and to digest things at a pace that is comfortable for you. So I love it. And that's why Taj and I love when we have authors join us on the Power of Love show, because it's super important to promote these books. I think they're, like I've always said, that was the most impactful thing for me was a book. And one thing Jennifer also says is to also please request the book at your local library. If in the USA, it helps to spread the word. Once again, I'm going to showcase the book is called When Someone Dies, a Children's Mindful How-To Guide on Grief and Loss. And I'm just looking for the artwork one more time. There we go. Okay, so we got that done. Now, one more thing, available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and Walmart. We aren't sure on IndieBound. You could check it if you're a huge IndieBound follower or consumer, I guess I would say. But if not on there, you can always go Amazon, the Amazon route. Okay, so another thing, though, that you are doing, which is very cool, is the grief and loss meditation song that you have on YouTube. So what was the inspiration behind and the hope for this extension of the book?
Like I was kind of talking about before, when we prime a child's brain to be able to learn something, we can do it in a lot of different ways. And music is such an incredible way to help kids learn and retain information. As you know, you guys are both musically inclined. Music can really reach areas of the brain that just talking and, like other kind of ways that we teach just don't reach the brain. And so the music and the meditations that I have in the backs of my book are intended to just kind of help reinforce the concepts in a different way, because we all learn so differently. So they're intended to be different ways to just kind of comprehend and work through grief, but also reinforce some of the skills that we're talking about in the book. So that was kind of my hope. Again, I love expressive arts. I think they're so important. And the songs that I do, I was classically trained, so it's a far reach from what I originally was trained in, but it just was a way to bring in what is so meaningful to me in my life. So it was a lot. It was multifaceted, but yeah, it's just another way to kind of help reinforce these ideas in kids' little minds.
That's so cool.
And, yeah, music's very great at retention for kids, and stuff, what I'm seeing with my kids and that way, and kind of them being educated through that is amazing in that way. So you're definitely right on. Yeah.
A question for you, Andrea. Do you have any plans to include additional installments to the Mindful Steps series? And what is your vision for the series long term?
Yes. So I'm working on a lot. Actually, I'm working on a lot of titles simultaneously right now. But the next thing that you'll likely see from me is kind of an extension of the Mindful Steps series, which will be actually a grief and loss workbook. And that will go with when someone dies. So the intention behind it will be to be used maybe in therapeutic settings, but also in homes. So families can utilize this to work through any kind of grief and loss feelings with their kids, either with the book or separately from the book, but taking a lot of the same concepts of kind of working through grief and loss feelings, creating connection and creating meaning from the loss. So that's kind of, hopefully next year you'll be able to see that. But that's kind of the next thing that you'll hopefully be able to see from the Mindful Steps series.
Angie wants to know, or says grief. Well, she first says grief books also let you know that you're not alone in your grief. Great point. But she also wants to know, will these books be on audiobook also?
They are not on audiobook, and there's not any current plans for that. They're a little bit tricky. Children's books are sometimes tricky to put on audiobook, especially like a guidebook kind of a situation. Optional engagement questions so that parents can kind of better connect with their kids while they're reading them. Again, because grief and loss is such a tricky subject, I wanted to be able to provide these open-ended questions for parents to connect with their kids. So not right now, but maybe in the future. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
So I have an email address, mindfulfams@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Mindful Steps Series. You can find me on Facebook at Mindful Steps. And then on YouTube, I don't think you can really message people on YouTube, but you can find me at the Mindful Steps Series on YouTube.
Perfect. And then, of course, the website. Is there
yes. AndreaDorn.com. Yep.
Cool. And that is AndreaDorn.com. Taj Jackson, there's some more comments I want to share and ask to Andrea, but before I get to one of the questions, I want to make sure you're good. Did you have anything you wanted to ask or share with Andrea?
No, I was kind of curious. You said classically trained in what? Just so that.
Well, I'm a vocalist, so
okay. No, because that's what I actually went to college for too. Classically,
really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, and then I went to something different too, so that's why I was just curious in my own thing. Yeah, same thing.
Okay, that's interesting. Taj, I thought you were the only one. You aren't the only one. Andrea, we are at that time where we like to give our guests a minute, 2 minutes, whatever time you need to share with our community whatever it is you want to leave them with. It could be anything from a new Netflix series that you can't stop binging to a secret coffee recipe. I'm not sure if those exist, but anything on top or anything off on topic is okay. We just want to make sure our guests get a chance to say whatever it is they want to share with their community. So with that said, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to share two things, if that's okay.
Yes.
So one thing is November is National Children's Grief and Loss Awareness Month. A lot of people know that there's a National Children's Grief and Loss Awareness Day, but really November is fully dedicated to children's grief and loss awareness. And I have spent the last couple of months compiling several many resources, books, podcasts, shows, handouts that I will be sharing throughout the month on Instagram, just to support children and families who are in grief. So one of the things that I'm doing there is I have partnered with several children's book authors to provide several free giveaways of many children's books in grief and loss. So if anyone is supporting a child in grief, I hope that you will come to find support and resources there. Again, everything is free and just there to help support during that month, and I'll have access to it afterwards too. So that's one thing that I wanted to share. The other thing that I was hoping to share is just my children's meditation at the end of the book. So it won't be in song form, but I just wanted to read it because part of it is there's sort of a gratitude piece for it, and I feel very grateful to be here today. And I think sometimes in grief and loss, it's important to remember the things that we're grateful for when we can. So I'd like to share that with you today.
Please.
With one hand on my tummy and one hand on my chest, I stop, breathe, and notice to give my mind some rest. When someone dies, it's hard. Life changes day to day. I'm learning things can change and that I can be okay. Grief feelings can be tricky for me and others too. And when I feel upset, here is what I can do. First, I stop and breathe. Then I give myself a hug. Next, I sit or talk out loud with someone whom I love. I listen to the birds that sing and see the sun that shines. I'm grateful I was in your life and you were part of mine. So I am very grateful that you were in my life today and that I had a small chance to be a part of yours. So thank you both so much for having me today. And thank you everyone who has joined us. I had a great time. So thank you so much.
Andrea, thank you. I'm going to read some of these comments. Adrian says, thank you for being here with us, Andrea. Angie says, you're doing great work with your books, Andrea. Georgina says, great job, Andrea. Thanks for helping. June Rob says, I'm definitely buying your book for myself and kids in my family. Anna says, gosh, you've already accomplished so much, Andrea. It's inspirational. And then there's a couple of things I also want to highlight. There's a couple other great comments that I think need to be talked about. Lana says, it may seem weird, but I am grateful that I grew up next door to a funeral home. My grandmother would take me across ever so often to see, and so there was no fear. Doesn't work for everyone, though, but that's pretty cool to acknowledge that and be appreciative of that. And again, I think it's just that the fact that you got to grow up with less fear on the topic, and that is our whole point, is that getting children's book and just getting literature to help start the process for your kids is a very helpful thing to do. Another thing we need to highlight is some of our super chats. So we'll start with a super sticker from Bommy. Thank you so much, Bommy. And then we have Donna, who says, hi, TJ and Taj. I have lost my uncle last Thursday, and 6 months ago, I lost my cousin and my sister, and it's not easy. Our condolences, our love and light is sent your way, Donna. I know it's a difficult time for you. Please stay strong and know you have us, the community, here with you. Another super chat we have is from Lala Chan Network. Thank you so much, Lala Chan, for the super chat. She says, wanted to dedicate my contribution to my mother. Marie Davis died 28th, 2021. She was an RN, a wonderful mother, and great professor for CNAs and GNAs. And it was supposed to say she died December 28th, 2021. Sending our love to you, Lana, and thank you again for supporting the foundation. And one more super chat is from Jennifer, who says, tomorrow marks 5 years that my dad became an ancestor. Thank you, DDJF, Andrea Dorn, TJ, Taj, everyone in this chat, anyone listening, and all the grief workers who help us walk through the storm. That is so well said, Jennifer. We are sending our love to you as well. But I love your comment because it shows the community aspect, that there's a lot of us who are here for you, but also who are going to be, if we haven't already, needing to walk through a storm. And that is what I can pretty much, I hate putting things into people's mouths, but all three of us, myself, Taj, and Andrea, we feel a lot of pride and joy in helping you get through whatever it is you may be going through. And whether it's books, whether it's Music Heal classes, whether it's these lives, our attempt is just to help people get through it in a healthy way. So I want to thank you thank you on behalf of the foundation for the contribution and the comment. I think that may be it. There's a couple other comments, if you guys are okay with it, that we should highlight. Marlene says, it was taboo when I was a kid and make me feel more anxious when my grandpa died because no one would talk about it and my feelings. There you go. So that's another case for needing to open up. And Andrea, you correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I picked up from you is that to make sure it's at their pace and everyone does it differently, right? Is there anything else you would add to that, or is that pretty much what you would suggest?
Yeah, and I think also just their developmental level, just making sure you're describing it in a developmentally appropriate level. But, I think this comment is so spot on, because there's so many of us as adults that are grieving now, learning how to grieve alongside our children, because we just weren't exposed to it when we were younger. Even though we were exposed to loss, we weren't exposed to how to grieve. So yes.
Well said. And TK Demix says, my 20-year-old older brother committed suicide in June. It was very unexpected. We were just laughing with him the night before he did it. So sorry to hear that. And again, sending you and your family love, light, and a big hug while you guys get through this very difficult time. And it just goes to show you, we have to very much appreciate each day we have with our loved ones and not take anything for granted. It's very difficult what you're going through, and just want to shed some light and love your way. Final thing, Anna says, learning how to grieve is life is learning. So it's a process, everyone. And I'll take this time to thank you, Andrea, on behalf of Taj and our foundation for doing your part in this whole thing, normalizing grief. And with the children's book at that, we want to thank you for contributing. And of course, thank you for joining us today. Is there anything else you want to add or say to the community or to the world?
No, just thank you so much for having me again. It has just been such a pleasure to meet you and to speak with you and to speak with everyone here today. The work you're doing is really inspiring. So thank you.
You are more than welcome. All right, everyone, we are going to sign off for today. We want to just shed some light your way and give you a lot of love, big hugs, and hope you found this episode helpful. And once again, Andrea, thanks for joining and thanks for contributing to the world. All right, everyone, we will see you guys next Wednesday. Adios.